Hey everybody, this is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman back with the 233rd Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. We are on a August 4th. We have incredible news to rock and roll with. It is 2 days shy of the 80th anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima, and we do want to spend a few minutes with that after our wonderful poem from our great Poet Laureate Mimi German out there in the wilds of Oregon. Then we're going to really go deep now on the upcoming 2026 election and all the various issues and nuances surrounding it. We do because today, as we speak, actually, the governor of Texas may be evicting all the Democrats from the Texas legislature. We got to keep an eye on that. We hope people from Texas will join us to cover that. It's truly an astonishing story. We are going to get to the fashion model Sydney, whatever her name is, who did. There's a whole big thing about blue jeans and all that stuff. But Mike Hersh has some inside information, and I have a thing for Sydney. What's her name? Because my father's name was Sydney, actually. And then we're gonna rock and roll. We're gonna get into energy stuff. We're joined by the great activist and godfather of the renewable energy industry, Ron Leonard, with some news from New York. So we got a rock and roll here. It's really great. We're almost up to 50 folks. And Mimi German, we also have Mayor Heidi with us. We'll get a quick hello from Mayor. I'm going to call you America's mayor. I know that was what they used to call Giuliani, but we won't make the connection. But you are, in fact, America's mayor, Heidi, and it's perfect. So
We
go
have
ahead, Mimi German, please. And you can share, Mimi, if you want, Sexy Sadie, the snake you saw while walking out there in the wilds of Eastern Oregon. But go ahead, Mimi. Give us your poem, if you would, please.
Okay. So the poem is back to the genocide in Gaza. I can't seem to break away from writing about that. This is called It's As If. Wrapped in red ribbons and sparkles that blind, they drone on about war as if they were talking about stock prices, as if it were a bloodless event, war, when they should be reporting that the sun has stripped the yellow from its flower in shame, and the rose has lost her scent to the emptiness of heaven. It's as if the mountain still stands in its grief, as if the tide that pushes the beating heart towards shore has not beached itself like a lost whale, as if tomorrow will rise with the sound of children laughing at the city park, as if the blossoms of a ceasefire truly exist. Thank you.
Well, let's hope they do, for God's sakes. Mimi, thank you for that. We appreciate it. And you mentioned war. So we are here to remind everybody that in 2 days, today is August 4th. So August 6th, which is Wednesday, is the 80th anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima. And we do want to commemorate it. HEDY TRIPP and then Ed Rampell. You've got a couple things to say for it. We'll start with HEDY, please. Oh, no, I wanted to say very quickly, hi to the mayor of, well, we'll come to you, Mayor, if you can wait a few minutes to talk about Hiroshima, and then we'll talk about Waldport, and then we'll go into the 26th election. So let's devote this next couple minutes to Hiroshima. HEDY TRIPP, you are well, let's
Minnesota.
go for it, HEDY, please.
Yeah, this is an excerpt from my memoir that I've been writing. And my memoirs begin with my father, Harold Bruins. He was born in 1909 in the British colony of Singapore, which would become the major British military base in Southeast Asia, and nicknamed the Gibraltar of the East by Britain's Prime Minister Sir Winston Churchill. He believed Singapore impregnable. However, the brilliant strategies of the Imperial Japanese Army showed how wrong Churchill was. My father was on the front lines when Singapore fell, and he was taken as a POW to the camps in Hakodate on the northernmost island of Japan. And he wrote about those 2 years that he was incarcerated. Whenever I recall the days of torture, he says, starvation, the dreadful months during winter, the long hours of work day and night, the beatings, floggings, and several other inhuman injustices will make anyone mad. How I've gone through these torture is a thing I'm unable to explain. My father would not have felt, heard, or seen the world's first atomic bombs dropped from high by American B-29 bombers on the Japanese city of Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, because he was in Hakodate, about 1,000 miles from the epicenter of the atomic explosions. 35 years later, in 1980, when I was 32, I joined the anti-nuclear movement in Massachusetts, and here I worked with Sluggo, Harvey. I was aware of the powerful forces of nuclear fission, and more importantly, the radioactive residues that could affect generations of our children. Such powerful destruction in the hands of unwise leaders is still with us, for we have not learned from the explosion on Hiroshima, which immediately killed an estimated 80,000 people, including women and children. Tens of thousands would later die of radiation exposure. Not satisfied, this new imperial power, the United States, dropped another atomic bomb in Nagasaki 3 days later, August 9th, 1945. It killed 40,000 more people. Japan's Emperor Hirohito announced his country's unconditional surrender in World War II in a radio address on August 15th, 1945, and cited the devastating power of a new and most cruel bomb. The surrender, formally signed on September 2nd, 1945, brought the end of World War II, and the irony that such death and destruction brought freedom for my father and my birth 3 years later. Today, a tea shop is on the site of one of the Hakodate POW camps. My family visited it this summer, and all who heard my father's story were deeply moved. Thank you.
Thank you, HEDY. Much appreciated. I did visit Hiroshima in 1975 or 6, and then we were in the middle of that. We were going to demonstrations against the Fukushima reactors, Amy and I, where we predicted where it was a million Japanese were yelling, "Don't build atomic reactors in a tsunami zone threatened by earthquakes." And did they listen? No, but now they have. And HEDY, you've been a part of that, so it's great to have you with us. Thank you for that. Thank you for all those memories. Ed Rampell is one of the great journalists of our LA community and has called heed to a movie that's coming out the day after tomorrow on the anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima. Ed, are you with us? Ed Rampell?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can. Can you tell us about this movie and why you think it's important? It's coming out in 2 days.
No, it's playing today on PBS. It's
Okay.
called Atomic People. It'll be broadcast tonight on PBS. Check your local listings, and it'll also be available online. And It's an excellent documentary directed by Megumi Inman and Benedict Sanderson. I believe that Megumi is Japanese. And Atomic People tells the story of what happened at Hiroshima and Nagasaki from the point of view of the victims and survivors of the A bombing. And the film is much more forthright and courageous than Oppenheimer was. As Sluggo probably knows, there's been an ongoing effort since August 1945 to cover up and to limit disclosure of what happened from the atomic blasts. And in the movie Oppenheimer, which for those of you who've seen Christopher Nolan's 3 hour long blockbuster, in 180 minutes, he literally cannot spare a single minute for what the raison d'etre of that entire film is all what it does. In other words, what that gadget or gizmo that they're inventing. The whole movie's about that. And he has time for the extramarital hanky panky of Oppenheimer, etc., but not 1 minute for the atomic bomb victims and survivors, not only in Japan, but also, by the way, in New Mexico, the indigenous people and Hispanics who there have been some recent documentaries, including one called Trinity, showing what they did at Los Alamos, what the Manhattan Project unleashed on the people of New Mexico. But in the movie Atomic People, it doesn't deal with the people of New Mexico per se, but on the people of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's an excellently made documentary. It doesn't descend into disaster porn, if you know what I mean. I mean, it's candid. It graphically shows what the A-bomb does to human beings. You see some pretty disturbing images, but one has to be forthright, unlike Christopher Nolan in Oppenheimer. And there was, by the way, another film, I believe the same year, about the concentration camps that got a lot of attention and Oscar buzz, and it never shows you what's really going on inside of Auschwitz. It's like these Hollywood filmmakers have their eyes on the box office, and they're trying to avoid a downer that would turn theater goers away from paying for their tickets at the box office. But you can watch Atomic People tonight on PBS. And by the way, one of the really great things about it is that the film shows how the survivors of the A bombing, what they went on to do to resist nuclear proliferation, to resist nuclear war and war in general. So I highly recommend you watch that. And you could read my review of Atomic People now in the Progressive magazine online.
Wow, Ed, thank you. It's great to have you with us. Is there still a PBS? I thought they went out of business.
Well, that's the CPB, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. But when you watch this film, you'll understand better why Trump, who's always trying to manipulate and control the flow of information and disinformation, you'll see why he wants to defund and get rid of PBS. They have another great documentary coming up in September about Thurgood Marshall. So this stuff is anathema to the MAGA maniacs, to Trump, etc., who can't deal with the scrutiny of truth, who can't deal with reality, like to a certain extent Christopher Nolan, who completely avoids in 3 hours showing what the raison d'etre of that entire film, what it did to human beings and to nature and
Right.
to man-made structures.
Right, and it had a horrible impact in New Mexico, including there was a girls' camp there where the fallout came down and the girls just thought it was whatever and put it in their mouths, and the death toll of the girls who were at that camp is devastating. You're 100% right, Ed. I've seen Oppenheimer twice, and I'm horrified that they never showed a single victim of the bombings, either at Trinity or at Hiroshima or at Nagasaki. And I will point out, Trump made a big deal of attacking Iran. he attacked Iran because there had just been these major marches, the No King's Day marches, and his embarrassment at his poorly attended birthday party. And so he had to change everybody's attention, turn over the table, and that's why he bombed Iran. He claimed that it had an impact on the Iranian weapons program, but in fact, the bomb that destroyed Hiroshima was done with 150 pounds of enriched uranium. The bomb was called Fat Boy because it was, large, but Iran has way, way, way more enriched uranium in stock than Trump ever got to. It would take one Hiroshima bomb to completely devastate Israel. The bombs that destroyed at Trinity and at Nagasaki involved each less than 15 pounds of plutonium. 15 pounds is nothing, and you can get it basically in the black market now on eBay. So, it's ridiculous. Ed, you're always great. Thank you for your review.
Can I add one thing?
Please.
In Atomic People, one of the A-bomb survivors points out that at the time that they were attacked, there were basically three atomic devices in the world, and today there's 12,700 approximately. Right. And the U.S. nuclear program did not end with Nagasaki. In 1946, the United States went on to wage nuclear war against the Marshall Islands.
Yes.
And there are wonderful documentaries, Dennis O'Rourke's film called Half-Life, and I believe his name is Robert Stone, directed Radio Bikini, right, which I think was Oscar nominated. And they continued to use human beings as nuclear guinea pigs to find out what the radiation does, etc., to human beings. So don't miss it tonight.
Yeah, really. Thank you for that. Thank you, Ed. And I do want to point out, by the way, that the MAGA movement tried to remove mention of the airplane which Henny mentioned, the bomber that carried the bomb to Hiroshima
Enola Gay.
Was called the Enola Gay, which was the
Right.
mother of the pilot, who was from Columbus, Ohio, by the way. And because they didn't want to say the word gay, but it was her name, for God's sakes. You got to be kidding me. Okay, thank you very much for that. And stay with us for a minute. Ruth Strauss and LYNN FEINERMAN, and then we're going to get to briefly Mayor Heidi, and then into the politics of the elections. Ruth Strauss, go ahead.
Yeah, well, Harvey, you are just wonderful. I am so glad you had Ed on, and I've heard his name, but with the fire hose of everything that's going on, I wasn't up to date. I just went to the Progressive, and there are 91 articles by Ed that are listed, and just perusing the first 5 titles looks like I need to go there and spend a lot of time reading him. But the other thing I wanted to do is every year, KPFK does a dramatic reading, and it's 6 hours both night for 2 nights of The Last Train from Hiroshima. Now, that has been panned a little bit because I guess initially there may have been some inaccuracies or over exaggerations or whatever, but it is riveting. And it gives really, you don't need pictures. I mean, it gives riveting explanations of what it was like for people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And so I, encourage people to. It's on at midnight. Something's happening at midnight on KPFK, but I encourage people to listen to that if you're a night owl, or if you can, and also donate because of that. But anyway, Harvey, thank you so much for having Ed on.
And that's not really what Ed looks like. He's hired an actor to stand in for him, but he's a very handsome guy. Ed Rampell, it's great to see you. Go ahead. Thank you, Ruth. LYNN FEINERMAN, and then Dave Saltman, and then we're going to move on. Lynn?
Yes, thank you, Harvey. At Grief's recommendation, I saw Atomic Football, and I have some significant quibbles about that movie. It went in some detail to the decision of General Leslie Groves,
Right.
that depraved idiot, to drop the second bomb on Nagasaki, regardless of the fact that it was totally unnecessary and wasn't ordered by anybody. But it only mentioned very briefly, was there any attempt by Japan to surrender before
yeah.
either of these bombs were dropped? And in
Yes.
fact, there was a huge, extensive negotiation going on as the bombs were dropped. And I just feel it's misleading. You know, I resented that deeply. So anyway,
Yes.
that's all.
Well, there's a book, the original book questioning, the academic book questioning the dropping of the bombs was by Gar Alperovitz, who I met once. It's called Atomic Diplomacy. Came out in the 60s. And yes, the Japanese were trying to surrender. And Henry Kissinger had a line about the bombing of Nagasaki. He said that the bombing of Hiroshima was designed, and he's right, to show that we had it and what it could do. And the bombing of Nagasaki was designed to show that we had the bomb and were willing to use it irrationally. There was no excuse for either bombing, as far as I'm concerned. But one of the reasons that they bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they had preserved those two cities from other bombing of any major impact because they wanted to have aerial photographs that would show what the bombs did. And that's, to this day, the bombings are listed by the military as announced nuclear tests. That's what they were. Thank you, LYNN, for that. Dave Saltman. David?
Hi, Harvey. Just two small things. Mr. Rampell correctly corrected you on the CPB versus PBS. PBS still exists. The impact, I've done 18 hours on PBS, as you know, and the impact on producers like me is not insignificant, but it's not fatal either, as long as there are other places to raise money other than CPB. For example, any of you would like to donate $2, we'll take it. The other thing is, about you mentioned, and I know this was just a joke, but that the enriched uranium was easily available on eBay. I just want to, just so eBay doesn't come crashing down on you, that is not true.
No, I was kidding.
However, when I was working for ABC News, I did a story on where could you find this kind of thing. And it turns out the United Nations publishes every year a huge dossier of all the cases of missing radioactive materials in the world. And it's a 1,000-page book.
Oh, God.
And for example, I remember one of them that I was trying to track down. Somebody stole about 20 pounds of U-235 from the back of a truck in Chinatown in New York.
Well, there you go.
That is the true story.
I guess that's how they cook the food. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Salty. Thank you. Great. It's always great to have you. So let's see that movie. And I got to tell you, because of the book we wrote, Killing Our Own, the visuals from Hiroshima and Nagasaki are really hard to take. But they never, ever talked about that was blew up in New Mexico. That took for years for anything to come out. And initially, the American military denied that there was any extraordinary impact from radiation at Hiroshima. But at least 15 American servicemen in Hiroshima, I don't think there are any women, in Hiroshima and Nagasaki were killed directly by the bomb. They were being held prisoner there. So there you go. We have 86 people with us, and thank you for that. And day after tomorrow, we'll all say a moment of silence or have a moment of silence, please. Okay, very quickly now, Mayor Heidi, and then we're going to go. Mike Hersh is going to introduce a special guest, and we're going to go into a very deep dive on what's happening with the upcoming elections for 2026, starting with Texas. But Mike has a great guest for us. Mayor Heidi, do you want to give us a 1 minute update on what's happening with your little town there of Waldport?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to tell you that a couple of years ago for Christmas, my brother gave me a Geiger counter and it came with its own sample uranium so you
Oh
could set
God.
the barometer. So I don't know if that was on Etsy or Amazon or where he found that, but I do have my own personal uranium. Just so you know, that happens.
Get it out of the house, please.
You know me, it's buried, long gone.
Okay.
I buried it on the farm with the rest of the waste. Anyways, sorry. I know it's not funny, but I have to laugh about it. Because I'm from Hanford. So when you guys are all talking, I'm thinking about the Green Run, right? I don't know if you guys have heard about the Green Run.
No, but next time. But very
Yes.
quickly, anything new in your town?
Yes, so we're recalling all 6 counselors and we are collecting signatures currently as we speak. And I've been getting postcards from people from around the whole world who are supporting me and also the voters who are working really hard right now to keep me in my seat. So, and then also, I guess what I wanted to share with you, Sluggo, is I am filing my new civil case against the city of Waldport, so that I can get a judge's decision that what they did was indeed unconstitutional, trying to remove me because they don't like me.
Well, what other reason could there be? So, thank you for that, Heidi. If you'll post your address for the postcards in or your email both, and so that people can be in touch with you. You're probably the only mayor in the world of a 2,000 population town that's getting this kind of attention. So we appreciate it. But real quick, Steve and Nicole, and then we're gonna move to the election of 26. Steve?
Yes, potassium chloride can be used to test a Geiger counter. I haven't tried this. I don't have a counter, but it ticks once a second. So just potassium chloride is radioactive. Try using that on your hands as a water softener for a year or two and see what happens. I have bad, very bad.
Thank you for that, Steve. Nicole Long.
Yes, I just wanted to ask you, did you say that if the bombing of the Iranian nuclear lab, if it had hit the uranium, it would have
No. What I said was, what I meant to say is that Trump is claiming that the bombing of the uranium facility in Iran would prevent the Iranians from having nuclear weapon. And that's clearly not the case. All they need is 15 pounds of plutonium, and there's tons of plutonium all over the world, or 150 pounds of uranium, which is what it took to destroy Nagasaki. And most of the media seen says that it seems to be confirmed that the Iranians have 900 pounds of enriched uranium that was not affected by the bombing, so they could do 6 Hiroshima bombs.
Oh, wow. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Okay, wow. Well, here we are. We are in the middle of what may be a monumental day in American history if the governor of Texas decides to remove from the legislature at least 50 Democrats. Mike Hersh, you have brought us a great guest, and everybody, this is going to be an open forum. We want to discuss the lead up to the 2026 election because the fate of the earth clearly turns on it. And Mike Hersh, do you want to introduce us to our guest? And then we're going to jump in. Everybody will please participate as you wish. But go ahead, Mike Hersh.
I'd be happy to, but I don't see Kai Newkirk here yet. Kai, if you're here on the phone, let us know somehow. But yeah, I don't
All
see
right, well,
Kai yet.
why don't you go ahead and lead us into this discussion? We have 90 people with us.
Absolutely. Well, Kai is going to be presenting on how to get big money out of Democratic primaries. And we've talked about how to protect the midterm elections. And one of the ways that we can do that is by cleaning up politics. It'd be great to get big money out of Republican primaries as well. There isn't big money in green politics, so that's all already taken care of. But we really do need to step up. And with the Supreme Court having gutted all the carefully calibrated and painstakingly negotiated uh, campaign finance laws, and I do mean gutted them. I think it falls on us as citizens to do a couple of things, citizens and residents and all people that can act on this. We need to shame people who take big money, shame those candidates and make it so nobody wants to vote for them, and make them decide whether they want to have big money or the voters' support. That voters vote, money doesn't, and do it that way. And the other thing is we need to work with the many great organizers who are trying to amend the Constitution to reinstate the common sense, very mild campaign finance reform. I mean, in most countries, what happens routinely in this country is prosecuted as bribery. And I see a caller with 817 has unmuted. Is that you, Kai?
They disappeared. I don't know if somebody deleted them
Okay.
or they just left.
Well,
All
I
right,
do
so-
see there is somebody on the phone with the 817 number. Can you hear me?
Zoom said the director asked me to unmute.
Okay,
Okay,
that's
that might
not
have been a
fine.
mistake, but thanks
We were
for
just checking.
thanks
Okay, so-
for weighing in.
As we jump into this open forum, Kai, Mike, you have raised the issue, which is the dominant issue of our time. You know, we have to ask, how did we get to this position where we have this, satanic monster in the White House? We have a completely corrupt legislature and judiciary. And the obviously the root of the situation is money and politics. And we have had over the decades, and especially since Watergate, very concerted attempts to keep money out of politics. We have had on our show many times the Citizens United, the campaign to get rid of Citizens United, and we've discussed that. But the bottom line is this: that we have billionaires now who are buying the elections, and that's the case in 24. Now, this is how Donald Trump got in the White House, certainly the first time, and even more certainly the second time. And I have to say something. I often get furious with what I've seen on the TV. So I'm a big follower of Stephen Colbert. I watch him as much as I can every night. I'm going to predict that he and Jimmy Kimmel and Jon Stewart and Rachel Maddow and Desi, what's her name, they're going to set up a network. You know, Dave Saltman, you can comment on this, but the networks think that they've gotten rid of of Colbert and that they can get rid of Kimmel and the likes of Jon Stewart. But the bottom line is the internet will give these people the opportunity to set up their own network. Now, Colbert interviewed Kamala Harris a couple of days ago, the former vice president of the United States, who, of course, was the Democratic nominee in 2024. And she complained. I mean, it's a good thing I wasn't there. She complained that people have not jumped in and gotten involved in fighting Trump the way they should. And I just had to take a deep breath because, as we all know, the night after that, well, she waited a night, and then the next day she conceded to Donald Trump, and then she disappeared, and nobody's heard of her from her until now. What she did do graciously and thankfully is bow out of the gubernatorial race in California because she was messing things up. Dave, I'll get you. Okay, great. She was messing things up. And I am happy to report, by the way, that the current front runner in the race for the governorship of California is Katie Porter, who's got a pretty good track record as a progressive. I did talk to her because someone gave me some money to give to the candidates of my choice a few years ago, and she was running.
Sluggo, hold up. That's a hypothetical, because we don't allow people to do things like that. So anyway, and this is a nonpartisan Zoom. So
Oh,
can
okay.
let's bring it back to nonpartisan
All right. So anyway, I
thoughts
talked to
and
Porter.
David Saltzman.
Hold on. I talked to Katie Porter, and she agreed to oppose Diablo Canyon, the nuclear plant, in her congressional race. So now we have a very interesting gubernatorial race. But for Kamala Harris to chide people for not standing up to Trump when she herself disappeared, this needs to be addressed. If anybody wants to chime in, go ahead, Dave Saltman, and then we're going to continue. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, Harvey, I have to say, first of all, I totally agree with you. And I love Katie Porter. But I disagree with your idea that this is the job for Stephen Colbert and company. I mean, God, let them run loose, go wild, do the worst they can do. But the problem is, Kamala Harris' silence is not great comedy material. It's great news. I'm not kidding. What are you going to do? Show her doing nothing? There's no joke there. It doesn't work as a comedy presentation, but it does work as a journalistic presentation. And that's why we need Colbert and company to run loose, but we also need Edward R. Murrow the third and Eric Sevareid and all those guys. And money is a problem that, truthfully, my solution, and somebody noted it in the menu in the chat too. Get rid of advertising. Advertising is the enemy, the billion-ton gorilla in the room. But since we're not going to do that tonight, what the old journalistic enterprises, like even the New York Times, which is, I wrote for the New York Times for 15 years, and I'm ashamed to even tell anybody anymore. They used to have a pretty effective, they called it the Chinese wall, given that's a bit of a racist type of statement. But anyway, the editorial department could not have any connection to the advertising department. And money was never, I won't say never, but was rarely an issue. In all the years that I worked in the mainstream media, and it was always for, New York Times, CBS News, and those kind of places, CNN with Ted Turner. Never once did anybody come to me and say, whisper in my ear and say, you have to skew it this way, or it never happened, and would be considered a gross violation of my duty as a journalist. So I wish I had a better answer, like how do you reinstate that? But since the barrier came down between editorial and business sides of what is, after all, a business type of publication, it's not democratic, but it's democratic in the sense that the voters are the viewers and the readers of the paper. They vote with their feet in this democracy. So I wish I had I wish I had an ending to this story.
Well, the ending is going to come in 26.
I
And
hope you're right.
this discussion on 2026, we have to take into account the fact that CBS could disappear.
That's right.
It's certainly now in the corporate maw of the Redstone family that clearly doesn't care about anything except money. They have basically traded Stephen Colbert and his show for a deal that had to be signed off on by the President of the United States, who's a political animal, in order for the woman, I think her name is Nancy, to make $2 billion. It's clear as day that this happened. And we're now going into a midterm election where we have, the governor of Texas dismissing 50 elected state legislators in order for what? Because they will not vote to gerrymander the state, which will further put control of the U.S. Congress into big money. And one of the tactics, of course, that's being dealt with is that the Democrats are now saying, well, we have to gerrymander too. This call originated in 2020 in part to fight gerrymandering. And I am not a fan of this idea of that now California and Illinois and New York have to come up with gerrymandered seats to counteract the gerrymandering in Texas and Florida, among other places. And Ohio, by the way, which is not talked about, but Ohio is a nightmare. So here we have a situation where one of the bellwethers of American democracy has been CBS News, where you worked, and the New York Times, where you worked, and which has published my op-eds. And I think I was interviewed once or twice on CBS. And
I was on the other end. I was on the other end.
You were introducing me. We were both in our Michigan shirts. And here we have a midterm election that's going to decide the fate of the earth. And the whole American media infrastructure that supported American democracy is on the brink of disappearing. What does that say?
I think one thing it says is that the money that can be made from the non-broadcast structure that has now emerged is bigger than the old kind of money. There's not that much money. You know who would be a good guest to get on here is somebody from one of the somebody like from Ogilvy, who could explain how advertising dollars have shifted in their.
But it's beyond advertising now. I mean, Elon Musk bought Twitter.
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos, for God's sakes, bought the Washington Post.
Right.
You have a billionaire in LA. Seems like a better guy, but nonetheless, Patrick Soon.
No, he's not. He's not a better guy.
All right, well, whatever he is, we have the LA Times now. We have the LA Times now owned by a billionaire. I mean, what's going on, Mike?
Well, keep in mind, the guy who owns the LA Times unendorsed Kamala Harris after the editorial board endorsed her, and basically, turned the editorial department into cheerleading for the Trump cult. And if you look into his record, it's pretty dark. He was sued by a number of different people, including his brother, for defrauding people having to do with medical devices, I believe.
Yeah.
But it's a whole, he's no better than any of the rest of them.
All right. So here we have two of the major media outlets in the country, the Washington Post. I mean, Bezos, here's a guy who rents the city of Venice for a $50 million wedding.
Who doesn't? You want to throw a little soiree? Why not rent a major city in Europe?
Well, I was talking to Dave about this, and I asked him what city he thinks that Jeff Bezos will rent for his divorce, and
probably Pisa. So with the Leaning Tower.
Well, Dave chose Reno. I think Reno's probably a better.
Well, yeah, that's a possibility. He could be trying to save some money by going a little cheaper. But yeah, you mean Sluggo, you aren't going to rent out Vienna for your birthday party?
Vienna, what?
Vienna,
maybe Venice,
Austria?
California. Yes, exactly.
Well, here's the thing: we're laughing, but the New York Times was also bought up by a billionaire, somebody named Slim from Mexico, who, reputedly had dealings with the drug cartels, and the drug cartels also reputedly traffic human beings. My understanding is he sold out much of his stake, but who knows what he did while he was there in terms of hiring and firing people. So, another one bites the dust. and I think you alluded to CBS taking a knee before Trump. It got Colin Kaepernick in a lot of trouble, but I guess CBS thinks that they can get away with it.
It's not only CBS, it's Columbia University. The universities are doing it. It's
Well,
extortion racket.
slow down. I'm not done excoriating one Columbia, then we'll move on to the next one. But the Columbia Broadcasting System, I think because they wanted to slide through a big merger, that's why they decided to pull the plug on Colbert's show. And 60 Minutes took a bent down for Trump and bowed and scraped before His Majesty.
Okay.
Now, Steve, give it to Columbia University.
Yeah, well, that and Harvard too is starting to bend. It's an extortion. It was covered this morning on Democracy Now! And Pacifica Network. Also, we had a group on this program some months ago, well, maybe a year ago now, called Check My Ads. And they went in and they were talking to advertisers and say, do you want to support this show, listen to this show? Or why are you supporting this? Why are you allowing your ads? And they got shows ended, okay? They cut millions of dollars worth of funding because they pointed out who these people were and what they were doing. And the advertisers said, I'm out of here. So
You raise
Check
a
My
very
Ads was the name of it.
You raise a very good point, Steve. And what I'll see in the chat is people saying, well, we need to do this, we need to do that. Well, we do need to do all that, but before we can do a lot of the things people are suggesting, we need to repopulate the Supreme Court with fewer fascists and some people who actually give a diddle about the Constitution. And if we can't get that done in time, we need to amend the Constitution, which can take a while. But what we can do is just what you said, Steve, shame people. Shame them and make them, for want of a better term, radioactive. A lot of them support nukes, so let's make them radioactive. Make these candidates unelectable by saying that they're a bunch of sellouts. And, that we don't have a whole lot of tools in our arsenal. Our imaginations are wonderful, but we can't dwell in a utopia where we have the Supreme Court respecting the Constitution anymore. It behooves us to be realistic and use the tools we have. And that Check My Ads is a wonderful way to go.
I do want to mention here, Nadine has jumped in and put in her 2 cents worth for Betty Yee in response to my kudos for Katie Porter. So we do want to have balance here. But I don't see the and Dave, you're a media expert, and others. I don't see how we balance the disappearance of PBS and the billionaire ownership of the Post and the LA Times. We're going to have to come up with something. I mean, the day of the internet, there are alternatives. Now, there is the Pacifica Network, but that's another issue that we could start to discuss. But I don't think that Colbert is going to disappear, and I also don't think that he's going to sign up with another network. So the question is, who's more powerful, Colbert or CBS?
Well, let me raise another issue and just see if this fits in your mix somewhere. And maybe you don't agree with this, but it seems to me that the turning point in all this was the repeal of the fair use.
Fairness doctrine.
The fair response. What do they call that? I'm forgetting.
The fairness doctrine. The fairness doctrine.
Fairness doctrine. Yeah.
Reagan did it. You're right. It was
that was something that cost. You had to pay for that time, and it kept everybody, relatively humble. And also the other difference I noticed, which is almost coinciding with that, when I worked for CBS and for CNN, both times I worked when William Paley was still running CBS and Ted Turner, the founder, was still running CNN. And that made a big difference. These were billionaires, but they had hearts. I mean, truthfully, yes, William Paley was a cigar salesman, and that's how he started. He bought up a radio network because he thought it would sell cigars. and he saw it as a great advertising medium, but he also saw it as a great medium for comedy and for news. And when World War II broke out, especially, he owned the world in terms of the media. And that went on, that's what made CBS's, reputation. So I don't know how you can ensure that, of course, that it always be the original owner. But I worked at both of those companies when they started getting into Mergerville, the Tisch merger, and then the Time Warner merger, and it became a colossal cluster, on both times. Same kind of thing. So I think it has to do with the I don't know if this is even a thing, but the lack of personality or the lack of persona that's connected with these big money organizations. You've now got the second.
Salty, hold on just a second. I think I don't want you to move on past a really good point you made about the mergers.
Yeah.
We have a handful of these mega corporations that dominate everything we see and hear on the radio, on the TV, and print. And these gargantuan behemoths are, they're so remote from the public interest anymore. It used to be a lot of journalists were basically blue collar people. They weren't these multi-million-dollar TV stars that we have today. They lived in the community. They had the same economic and social interests as the average, everyday person.
Exactly.
You witnessed these changes.
Right. So,
hold on, Sluggo. Just you witnessed these changes, Salty. Can you just walk us through some of that and what you think the impact has been?
I worked with Charles Kuralt very closely, who was this absolute salt of the earth. He was the last of the Murrow boys to be hired. And he and we got along famously. He was a brilliant guy, and he was a real down home, and North Carolina boy. I think his father was, I may be getting this wrong, but he was something like a taxi driver or something like that. And I also worked with Charles Collingwood, who had been the CBS chief European, who was chief of all correspondence at one point. And he was the chief European correspondent during the war. Same kind of thing, really down home. These guys were very brilliant and, super, super smart and well educated and tough, too. They didn't cave into this. Eric Sevareid, you may know this story. During World War II, Eric Sevareid parachuted into Burma, and nobody saw him for 6 months. He disappeared. Everyone thought he was dead. And one day he came staggering out of the woods. That's why he walked with a cane. And he got, he won like 2 Pulitzer Prizes in that same week. These guys were giants, and intrepid, and they felt a public consciousness. Guys like Walter Lippmann, you may not agree with their politics 100%, but they were basically middle of the road, sort of, maybe I'm going to say FDR Democrat. They weren't real left wing. They weren't communists by any means, and they were not fascists either. But God forbid, God, that was the last thing they would ever be. The guy who wrote the definitive book on Hitler was William Shirer, CBS News correspondent. So it's a different world. I wish I could understand it.
Well, what we know now is that big money has warped everything. And the attempts by the US Congress to rein in big money in some way, shape, or form have been completely thwarted by the Supreme Court. Starting before Citizens, with Buckley and Valeo back in the 70s. After Watergate, there were 2 major pieces of legislation passed by the Congress. Buckley and Valeo, and to restrict money in politics. And there was a guy in the Supreme Court named Lewis Powell. And Lewis Powell had written a major memorandum. He was appointed by Nixon. And he was from Virginia, and he had written a major memorandum, which I understand was less than 10 pages, outlining for the Chamber of Congress, for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, that the corporations should take over America. It was published in 1971. And I remember that because in 1791, Alexander Hamilton had written a similar memo. It was about the rise of commerce in the newborn United States, which Alexander Hamilton was all for. He was basically a royalist, Hamilton, and he may have been gay as per the show on Broadway, but we don't know. But nonetheless, these decisions with Lewis Powell on the Supreme Court, the attempts to rein in big money were devastated by the court. And two of the decisions were there was Buckley, there was Vallejo, and there was Bellotti. And Bellotti, Massachusetts versus Bellotti, was written by Lewis Powell. And then there was Citizens United. So you had 4 U.S. Supreme Court decisions that destroyed the attempts by the Congress to rein in money in politics. So at this point in time, we now have a system that is, a Congress that's completely bought and paid for, and and the media is now in the same similar situation. Obviously, as Dave Saltman can give us from the inside out, and as we speak, we're losing which one, PBS or CPB, Corporation Public Broadcasting, one or both. What are we left with in this country? Well, there is the internet. And I just saw Hillary Keys has put in the chat that TikTok is now banning progressive input and banning posts on TikTok. I'm too old to go to TikTok. I don't know how to do it, but and so where do we go to get information around? Mike Hersh and then Steve. Anybody else want to jump in? Please. I hope this is a good dialogue. We still have 88 people with us. So please feel free to jump in. Mike Hersh and then Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Sluggo. You're absolutely right to indicate the Powell memorandum. It is relatively short. It's quick, if stomach-turning reading. In it, Powell talks about how communists are taking over universities, the media, and even business boardrooms, just to show how paranoid and out of touch he was. He felt that, people at IBM and General Motors and General Dynamics and all the other generals were lefties and Trotskyites or something. And that's the way this thing read. It really reads as like like the ravings of a paranoid, but it gained traction and it became the blueprint. Before Project 2025, it was the blueprint that the chambers of commerce did, because up until then, businesses generally supported free give and take at universities and hired some diversity at will, just trying to recruit the best and the brightest. Afterward, things changed dramatically. Powell really flipped things on its head. And one of the things he noted was the rise of Ralph Nader, and he envisioned a whole bunch of Nader's raiders doing horrible things like, making cars safer to drive, keeping corporations from dumping toxic waste into our drinking water, that kind of thing. And for Powell, that was creeping communism, a big red wave that was going to destroy capitalism once and for all. And if you think of where we were in 1971, I don't think that we were there. I don't think that the free market system was under attack. I mean, there were people in the streets upset about Vietnam. There were people organizing for civil rights. But Powell saw all this as some big communist scheme. And I'll drop the link to a blog I wrote about it, where I contrasted 2 different Supreme Court justices. One was Louis Brandeis and one was Powell. And Brandeis said you could have a democracy or you could have a lot of really rich people, but you can't have both. And Brandeis was absolutely right, as we see all around us today.
Right. And there's someone is in the chat has a question of the history of the Supreme Court. From the beginning of the Republic, the Supreme Court's been a pretty beginning with Chief Justice John Marshall, who was appointed by John Adams as he was walking out the door. And Marshall was Thomas Jefferson's cousin, and they hated each other. And John Adams, they became good friends later, but and he put Marshall on the court for 36 years, through God knows how many presidents. And through him, the court was pretty right wing, even through the Civil War, although there were a couple of decisions from the court that led directly to the Civil War. Most importantly, the Dred Scott decision. There were others. The U.S. Supreme Court, many of us, baby boomers, grew up seeing the U.S. Supreme Court as a bastion of liberalism and freedom, because in the 1930s, Franklin Roosevelt began appointing liberal justices to the Supreme Court, one of whom, Hugo Black, ironically, had been a member of the Ku Klux Klan. But they became liberal, and the court became a bedrock of civil rights and civil liberties through the 1970s. And then when Nixon got a hold of it, he started to put right-wingers on the court. And then, of course, Reagan and Bush went hog wild, and then we got to Trump, who's put these three, I can't even begin to characterize them, right-wingers on the court, along with Clarence Thomas, and I remember the hearings on Clarence Thomas and Alito, and who are extreme right-wingers as well. So you got five really hardcore right-wingers out of nine, and then you got John Roberts, who is, a bit protective of his image, but who's been horrible as well. And ironically, not ironically, predictably, the only three liberal voices on the court are women, and two of them of color. So here we are, with a court that has been upholding the right to dictatorship. And by the way, I want to take issue. People use this word authoritarian. Bernie uses it all the time. This is beyond authoritarianism. This is dictatorship. And people should stop pussyfooting around what we're looking at here. It's way, way beyond mere, authoritarianism. We're in Hitler country now, right? And Donald Trump was called America's Hitler by J.D. Vance, the current vice president. I think Vance meant it as a compliment or a wish fulfillment, but here we are. And so the court, like I say, it has been a bastion of freedom and liberty only between the 1930s and the early 1970s. And God knows what we're going to be living with now. And I will say this, it is worth mentioning. They're talking now about the possibility that Thomas and Alito will resign. They're both in their 70s, while the Republicans have control of the Senate. And if they do that, they'll nominate younger, horrible right-wingers. I mean, Thomas has gone his whole career, as has Alito, without a single decision of warping away from the extreme right wing position. In the past, even when you had conservatives, every once in a while they come up with something decent. Thomas and Alito have been spotless in their extreme right wingism, and if they step down before the Senate can be neutralized, they're going to put 40 something right wingers on the court, and then it's going to be yet another nightmare for God knows how long. Steve Caruso, then Sandy, then Mila, and then Marion. Marion Edie, nice to see you, Marion. Go ahead, Steve, and then Sandy.
Yeah, Facebook and there's a lot of other apps too are shadow banning people. So you put a link in there and usually they'll open up a picture and elaborate on the link. Now, if they don't like the link, like say your post about Peter Thiel or Palantir or something, it's just text. You don't get the privilege of having your picture put up there or your opposition. So it's definitely a slanted thing, just like Twitter, people get kicked off Twitter all the time and that whole deal. So
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, I was kicked. Of course, I was kicked off Daily Kos 15 years ago. I still haven't figured out why, but there you go. Thank you for that, Steve. Yes, the social media stuff has also been become extremely questionable. We do seem to have what's this new one? And there's a blue sky.
Blue Sky,
Blue
yeah.
Sky, yes, we're on there.
And what about what's the email one? Substack.
Listserv.
Substack. You have
There's
Substack as well.
There's also a thing called Spoutable, where Spoonamore came out with his first proclamation that the election was
Yeah.
supposedly
So
stolen.
the internet seems to be a tough one to nail down, but we're gonna have to keep moving. It's tough right now. Sandy Bozenius and then Mala Reeson and then Marion Edie. Please, Sandy.
Yeah, thanks, Harvey. I may be one of the few people in this country who's actually really excited and positive, because these guys are messing up so badly. And I listen to the news way too much, but everything I'm hearing, so much of what I'm hearing is really positive, including this show. I mean, it's showing what people are doing. So my suggestion is, in your hometowns, that's what we're trying to do here in Columbus, is find people who are, go out there, and there's a lot of people who seem to want to run. I'm not one of them, but there's a lot of people who seem to want to run. And get them together and run on like a few issues. One, healthcare for all. If they do that, they will beg this election. Healthcare, if that's what they're going to fight for, healthcare for all. The other one is money out of politics, and I put the link in there for Move to Amend. So I hope that comes up at some point, because that
Yes,
is
Move to
really
Amend is a great group, and
Yeah.
they've been with us before.
And then there's so many other issues. Genocide. We're not gonna, that's make noise with it. Let people know that this is how you feel, and you'll get voters like crazy, because nobody likes, so many people. MAGA's turned off so many, and they're feeling the crunch already from those horrible policies, and they're seeing it on TV. And there's Fox viewers, but I don't think they're the majority. And the other thing is, just talk about money out of politics. And I think we can win these races. Join together, like,
Well,
people don't have a
that's
lot of money,
something
join together.
Sandy, you're in the belly of the beast there in Columbus, and
Oh, tell
the
me.
other thing we have to talk about here is protecting the vote.
Uh-huh.
Gerrymandering is the tip of the iceberg. We're talking about mass disenfranchisement, as we saw in Georgia, as reported by Greg Palast, as we saw in Florida 2000, perpetrated by Jeb Bush, and the Democratic response to Jeb Bush's theft of the 2000 election was to attack Ralph Nader.
Mhm.
Sluggo,
Yeah, go ahead, Mila.
we're joined by Kai Newkirk, so Mila and then Marion, and then can we get Kai on?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Mila, go ahead,
Beautiful.
please, Mariam.
Oh,
Mila, Mariam.
thank you. Yeah. I wanted to say that I was very active on Daily Kos when you were kicked off, Harvey, and I was watching pretty closely. I was peace voter on Daily Kos. I haven't really been very involved with that website for quite a while, but you have the honor of having been purged at the same time as David Sirota for the sin of actually criticizing Democrats and raising the possibility that people outside of the Democratic Party might have some viability in the political system. I was really watching closely at that time, and that's, I'm sure, why you were purged. But I wanted to just go back and give a shout out to Don Goldmacher, who was on with us last week, because he was the very first, along with Francis Causey 14 years ago, to really inject and educate people about the Powell memo that you were talking about earlier. He and Francis Causey produced a wonderful documentary called Heist, Who Stole the American Dream, that Robert Reich kind of modeled his subsequent documentary after, which was pretty anemic compared to what Don Goldmacher and Francis Causey produced back in 2011. But if people, it's still very relevant today. It's going to be reissued soon.
Oh, good. Well, we'll have Don on to talk about it.
Great. Okay, so
Mila, it's great that you remember. I could never figure out why Daily Kos purged me. And then I tried to figure it out, and then they said I violated the rules. I haven't been back on since, except Carl Grossman got us on. But, it's amazing. Thank
Well,
you for No,
Sluggo,
Marion,
real
let's
quick.
go to Marion. Marion,
Well,
and then Kai.
before we get to Barrett, I want to make sure, Kai, how long do we have you for?
Um, I'd like to be out by 3:30.
Okay, that's
Okay,
fine.
so we
Marion,
can do
Edie, and
that.
then we'll have you Kai with us. Go ahead, Marion.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm okay. Concerning the crisis and the collapse of the news media, it really hit home to me when I heard that NPR, public radio, they're closing their doors because of zero funding. And and before all the good people that are on those shows disperse, I think it's really important that we try to get private funding for those networks. And I know that the blue states, like in Massachusetts, they were urging people, give to us, the public's radio. But the places that really need us are the red and purple states, where sometimes that's the only freely available news that people know about that they can get. And I'm wondering what can be done to save what was public radio, public television.
Well, we're going to find out. And Marion, you were a co-founder of the League of Conservation Voters. So, we've never been. This is something we haven't seen in U.S. history since the 50s, and then before that, since the period between 1918 and 20 that nobody ever talks about. But we had actual dictatorship in the United States in between 1918 and 1920, no doubt about it. And then close in the 50s, and now Trump is pushing the envelope, no doubt about it. So, Marion, keep coming with us.
You know what? I want to know who can fund or who can help the public radio in some of those states before it just disappears.
Good question.
That's a great question, Marion, but we can barely fund ourselves, so we're the last ones to answer that question. But that's a question that needs to be answered.
Marion, keep coming with us. We still have 87 people with us. And then, Mike, now, do you want to introduce Kai Newkirk, please?
Absolutely. It's my great honor and pleasure to introduce my friend Kai Newkirk. A lot of people talk about doing things. A lot of people have a lot of really great ideas, but Kai is one of the people that I admire so deeply because he doesn't succumb to what Dr. King called the paralysis of analysis. He figures out what to do, rolls up his sleeves, and he gets it done on a whole range of issues. The less popular, the more he seems to like them, the more long the odds seem to be, the sweeter the triumph when he wins. And he always does it with a smile. He does it in a way that inspires and uplifts others. And I'm going to stop talking so he can do some of that magic for us now. Thank you, Kai. Take it away, please.
Okay, Kai, we've been discussing, the perils of the collapsing media and the takeover of big money of the American political system. So go ahead and jump in. Tell us what you're working on first, and then how you can proceed.
Sure. Mike, thanks for that generous introduction. I'm grateful to be with all of you today and for all of the good and hard work that PDA members are doing across the country. I was asked to join today to make sure y'all know about a call that we're doing just a little bit later today, less than 2 hours from now. We're doing our Stop Big Money AZ national call. And it's organized by our Stop Big Money AZ campaign, which is a group of folks centered in our Arizona Democratic Party Progressive Council that are organizing to ban billionaires and corporations from buying our primary elections. Many of us have been in the fight to try to get big money out of politics, to try to end this kind of corruption, to make our politics one that is responsive to people as equal citizens, to all people, that isn't dominated by wealthy interests for many years, fighting at the level of federal legislation, of state legislation, trying to reform the Supreme Court, overturn rulings like Citizens United. And we've made a lot of progress, in my view, in terms of building up a strong majority of Americans that want to see that change. And we got close to making some significant progress with the Freedom to Vote, John Lewis Freedom to Vote Act um, a few years ago, but were stymied by the filibuster and Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin and so on. But one power that we do have as Democrats and that we have right now is the power of our state parties to regulate our internal affairs and our nominating processes, our primary elections. And so we've decided that we need to use that power now to start cleaning up our own house and to walk our talk as Democrats, put our money where our mouths are, and say that we're going to use the power that we have now to try to intervene in the primary election process so that billionaires, whether it's Elon Musk or Michael Bloomberg or Reid Hoffman or anyone else, or crypto firms or APAC, whatever whoever it may be, that they're not able to use these massive amounts of private wealth through super PACs to come in and dominate our primary elections. And so we took the first step in Arizona of passing a resolution at our June 7th state committee meeting that commits our party to this goal. It establishes the goal and the principles of what the policy needs to be and creates a process to develop the full policy and enact it through a vote at our September state committee meeting. So that's coming up. So we took this first big step. It's a big win. We are we're in the process of developing the policy and pushing to organize the support to enact it in full in September. And at the same time, we've seen how this has inspired Democrats across the country who are saying, hell yeah, we want to do what they did in Arizona, right?
Okay. Now remember, we are nonpartisan. We're happy to have you. You're identified as a Democrat. We also have Republicans on, and we're happy if you want to bring some Republicans into the Republican nominating process. That would be great. But we know you're in Arizona, and we look forward to you keeping your work up. We've had John Brakey on with us quite a bit, by the way, to do protection of elections in Arizona. But
Sure.
Go ahead, continue.
Yeah, no worries. Hey, I mean, I've worked with Republicans. It's great for them to go for it, do what they can. But this is something we're trying to move through the Democratic Party
That's okay. That's fine.
in Arizona and then in states across the country and at the DNC level. And North Carolina Dems already passed a resolution modeled on ours. And there are folks trying to make it happen in state parties across the country. So we're inviting folks to join this call tonight to learn about what we did in Arizona, how we did it, and how they can try to replicate and adapt it in their states through passing.
You have a link? You have a link to your resolution, what you passed?
Yeah, stopbigmoneyaz.com is where you can read the resolution and you can register to join the Zoom. That's at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern tonight. Bernie Sanders has confirmed now that he's going to be on the call. We're excited about that. Lawrence Lessig, a key leader in the national movement around money and politics, Harvard professor, will be on. Larry Cohen, former chair of the Communication Workers of America International Union. Leaders from our Stop Big Money AZ team and folks from around the country. And we think that the more states that we pass these resolutions in and then move forward to try to develop the full policy and enact it, that it's the better the chance we have to actually implement in some of these states and really change the game and how our primaries happen, so that a situation like what happened with Cori Bush or Jamal Bowman, working class champions, progressive fighters that were defeated and pushed out of Congress by big money interests, in that case, mostly crypto and APAC, that we can make it so that that doesn't happen anymore.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the fears, you know, of course, that the Democrats are talking about doing gerrymandering in California, Illinois, New York, et cetera, to offset what happens in the Republican states. But my fear is that the Democrats will use this gerrymandering to get rid of progressive Democrats, as they did in Ohio to Dennis Kucinich. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's these things are related and, you know, the interconnected universe that we live in, but I think there's a separate dimension, right? This is going to change the process in terms of what happens around the ability of billionaires, corporations, big money interests to drop these millions of dollars in primary elections and determine the outcome. The question around, how to respond to the egregious efforts of Republicans to gerrymander to ensure their House majority, I think, is a difficult one. We want to have fair processes, right, that empower voters, and at the same time, we have to ensure that we have 2026 and 2028 elections, and that they give us a chance to defeat the authoritarian and fascist forces that Trump and MAGA represent, in my view. And we see this push, the Stop Big Money push, as critical to that, because if we're going to defeat Trump and the fascists and the authoritarians, we have to win back a lot of working class voter trust, right? And we've got to show people that they can count on us, the candidates that come out of our Democratic primaries, to fight for the policies that are going to make a difference in working class people's lives, whether it's Medicare for all or raising the minimum wage or massive efforts in affordable housing, empowering unions, taxing the rich, etc. And the only way we can do that, or at least a big step to help in that, is to be able to tell voters, you can trust that the folks that come out of our primaries are not beholden to the billionaires that are screwing you over, right? That these people are not able to come into our primaries in the way that they have been, and that these folks have been chosen by the voters, and they're going to be accountable to them, accountable to poor and working class voters first. So we think it's a big piece of turning this around.
Good. Sounds good. And of course,
Yeah, we welcome folks to join us on the call this evening and to try to implement this in your state parties. And we think it can be a real extension of the political revolution that Bernie launched with PDA's help in 2015 and 2016, and really change the game and ultimately lead to something where the 2028 presidential primary process hopefully can be free of super PACs and this kind of corruption as well.
well, listen, we just got breaking news from LYNN FEINERMAN. I love it. The governor of Texas has issued arrest warrants for the Democrats who didn't show up to vote in favor of his gerrymandering. This is really something else, man. I got to tell you. Well, one thing before we move forward is I would like all Democratic, all elected office, but certainly the Democrats who get nominated, to pledge their opposition to nuclear power and to support the a conversion of the American economy entirely to wind and solar, along with battery and geothermal. We have got to stop the power of the nuclear industry, which is among the very worst offenders in this big money push for fascism. Nuclear power is fascist power. And, we've got Democratic governors in California, New York, Illinois, and Massachusetts, for God's sake, supporting nuclear power. That's got to stop. And so I hope that you can get that written in. Okay, go ahead, Nicole Long. And then Mila. Nicole and then Mila, please. Go ahead. Nicole, are you unmuted? No. And Mila, are you unmuted? I'm trying to unmute you there.
Okay, I'm
Go ahead.
unmuted, so I shall go. Thanks so much, Kai, for being here. When we talk about money in politics, there was a ballot measure in Arizona, I think it was in 2018, where the people of Arizona were asked to mandate at least 50% solar on municipal buildings. It was a statewide measure. More money was poured into defeating that measure than it was, like a record amount of millions of dollars that was poured in. I don't know if you remember that, but ratepayer money was used to defeat that. And one of the big opponents of that measure was the municipally owned Palo Verde nuclear power plant that was in large part responsible because they believed that solar was somehow a threat to nuclear power in Arizona.
Well, it is.
Pardon me?
It is, and we're glad for that.
Exactly. So we've got two senators from Arizona Democrats who are openly promoting nuclear power. You've got the largest nuclear power plant in the United States.
Mila, could Kai respond to some of that, please?
Can I?
let her
May-
just finish. Go
May I,
ahead.
may I
Very
finish?
quickly. Go ahead, Maya. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So in Arizona, the Palo Verde nuclear power plant is the largest nuclear power plant in the United States. It evaporates in the desert 27,000 gallons of water every minute of every day. Raul Grijalva understood the problem with Palo Verde. But, you know, it is a big problem in Arizona that you have so many Democratic leaders who are pushing nuclear power, promoting nuclear power. And, you know, I'd like to know whether the Democratic Party can come to grips with this enormous problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Maya. Go ahead, Kai.
Yeah, I was here in 2018, and I think I think that was my first election voting here in Arizona. Big advocate of solar, and user myself, but I don't know about that history with the campaign. The policy that we're trying to push would just change stuff around Democratic primary elections, right? So it wouldn't have to do with ballot initiatives and stuff like that. Obviously, the problem of big money in politics is much bigger than just our primary elections, right? But we think that winning on this can build the political will within the party, and gain more support from voters so that we can then implement at all those legislative levels policies that would address a situation like that.
Well, good.
Which, and you know, my many years living in LA and California, just seeing the statewide ballot initiatives and just the massive amounts of corporate money that would come in, it's a huge problem, right? You know, those questions should be decided in a process that's more democratic and fair than that.
Absolutely. And just remember, nuclear power is fascist power. And we have got to stop the industry. And I'm really angry that the Democrats are supporting it. Nicole Ung, and then we'll have a report from Alice directly from Texas, where she is under arrest. No, I'm just kidding. But go ahead, Nicole, and then we'll go to Alice Embry in Austin.
Yeah, Nicole seems to be having trouble unmuting, but Carla, I think, is unmuted. So Carla.
Carla, and then Alice Embry, please.
And keep in mind, we only have a
Thank you.
few more minutes left with Kai.
Okay, this is Carla from Minnesota, and I'd like to ask the gentleman who's talking about stop the big money what they're going to do with the DNC. In Minnesota, we've been trying it for years, and our two senators are big into big money. And the Ken Martin, who was just elected by a huge majority of people, will not come out and say he will stop taking big money. So I'm wondering if you're coming to Minnesota in September to the DNC meeting and start raising a ruckus about stop the big money, because it's a major thing. I agree with you 100%.
Beautiful. Thank you, Carla. I don't have any plans to go to the next DNC meeting myself, but we'll see what happens. But I do know that there's effort happening, partly inspired by what we've done here in Arizona, to try to do something at the DNC level, addressing our primary elections. And Bernie Sanders actually did a letter with 7 other senators signing on, calling for these kind of changes within our House as Democrats, that referenced our Arizona resolution in the week or two after that. So there's a lot happening on different fronts, and we're trying to drive all that forward and put the first big win on the board in Arizona in September and try to move it in as many different state parties as we can, with folks hopefully coming out of our national call tonight, and then simultaneously be pushing at the DNC level.
Great. Sounds great.
Sluggo, before I call on Donald Smith, Kai, do you
I
think you can
want to get Alice in. Alice had her hand
I
up.
got that, but we got 2 minutes left with Kai, so I just wanted to ask him, Kai, would you be willing to come back like next week and report on what happens tonight on the Zoom? Do you think you might be able to do that?
Of course.
All right,
Yeah.
we'll be glad to have you back. And before you go, you want to get the report from Texas. Alice Embry, are you in federal custody now?
No, but we do have a domestic army funded by ICE now, and God knows what they'll try to do. This has happened before in Texas. If you have a chance to listen to these very courageous legislators, please do. Please support them. That, in my opinion, you know, yeah, there are risks to redistricting, but this is, those states at least need to threaten it. The ones that, they're in New York and Illinois and in California.
Right.
So, anyway,
Well,
I'm not in jail.
But you're in Austin. Has the governor actually now issued these arrest warrants?
Well, this is Ken Paxton, the Attorney General, elected statewide official who is both indicted and impeached and was caught on film evading a house warrant arrest when they slipped out the back door. So, there's nothing illegal about quorum busting except in Ken Paxton's demented authoritarian mind. And so, it's going to play out in the courts, and they'll say, of course, they'll threaten that. Of course, they will threaten to unseat everybody. But, we'll have their backs because these are brave representatives. And in case you didn't know, just very briefly, the governor could have called an election for Sylvester Turner's seat. 800,000 people in Harris County have been unrepresented. He did not do that, but the minute Trump said 5 new seats, he hustled his butt to call a special session, even though the special session should be devoted to disaster planning and relief. And I'm going to take more time, but I can only say, Kai, please if you have, we need a project 2028, and we don't just need it for the Democratic Party. We need to be very overt about no money, and it needs to be a platform just like Project 2026 had all their stuff. So if people can craft that, it's not, great if we can get the Democrats to do it, but even better if we put out a bold plan that's really a national plan. That's all.
Well, I'm sure that your news from Texas, and Kai, Alice is in the belly of the beast there, and your representative congressperson died and they haven't replaced him yet. So there you go.
Yeah,
Kai, you want to say anything to our Texas hostage here?
Well, thanks for what you're doing, Alice, and solidarity with the Democrats who are walking out of the legislature there. I think we need bold and courageous nonviolent civil resistance at every level in all our institutions right now. And I think this is a good example of that. And we know that the authoritarians are going to crack down, but when we are strategic and we're moral and we take well-considered nonviolent action, then that repression should backfire on them, just as we're seeing the ugliness and the violence of ICE and Trump's mass deportation campaign is backfiring on them. So we got to be strong. We got to push forward. What we're trying to do in terms of the Stop Big Money is just one small piece of this big puzzle, right? But what it can do is make it so that Democrats can win back some trust from voters when we can say, hey, you guys hate this corrupt system. Well, and we want to pass federal legislation and state legislation and reform the Supreme Court in terms of that national platform, Project 2028, right? And you can trust us that we're serious about that because we've taken these measures with the power that we do have to regulate our internal affairs, what we do as a party. So we think it all fits together, and we're trying to make that happen and make it more of a movement party. And we know there's folks that are always going to be nervous about change or that are resisting it or that are benefiting from the status quo as consultants or candidates or orgs or whatever. But this is super popular, not just with Democrats, but all voters, but especially with Democratic voters. So what we say is, look, if you think the status quo is acceptable, and we should do nothing, that's fine. But almost nobody agrees with you. And so what we're saying is we have to change it. We have to intervene, and we'll work with anyone in good faith about what the specifics of the policy are, right? But what we're not going to accept is doing nothing. And so,
well, you have to remember that let's look at the Democrats' legacy as someone who's been in election protection for a long time. In 2000, Al Gore did not stand up. In 2004, John Kerry did not stand up. In 2016, Hillary Clinton did not. And in 2024, Kamala Harris headed for the door. Well, so we need a better record from the Democrats. Alice, I do want to congratulate you, by the way. Texas has now acquired Ghislaine Maxwell, and I'm sure that, that her star quality will help you fight. But go ahead, Kai, please respond to that. Sorry, and I've been on the brunt of it, up close and personal. The Democrats have not paid attention to the election protection movement. And the beyond money.
But Texas legislators are, and
Yes.
if you listen to any of them, they are very bold in what they say, and it's very refreshing. And they are not the DNC, and they are not Chuck Schumer sending his letters to whoever he sends his letters to. I mean, they're in the fight. We appreciate people who are in the fight.
Here.
Thank
I've
you.
got to drop off after this, but just to say, yeah, look, I mean, the history is a mixed bag, like I say, I'm a FDR, MLK, AOC Democrat, and I'm proud of so much of what they did, right? And there's a lot of Democrats that have done and continue to do things that disappoint or dismay or outrage me. But this is our party too, right? And a lot of what we're fighting for is more popular with actual Democratic voters than what
Well, you're in a position you need
corporate
to
Democrats.
help deal with the legacy of the Democrats not standing up for national presidential elections. They can't do that again. Kai, it's great to have you come back next week.
Many thanks, everybody. Hope to see some of y'all this evening.
And also say hi to Ken Bennett. He's the Arizona Republican that we had on with John Brakey. He was very good, by the way. He's probably ready to jump parties now, so you may want to track him down.
Right on. See y'all later.
Take care, Kai. Okay, thank you, Mike Hersh, for bringing Kai on with us. Mike, you want to say something, and then we'll go to Nicole Ung.
Yeah, really quick, Alice. What I'm hearing is that the Republicans are going to try to put Lloyd Doggett and Greg Casar back into one district to knock one of them out of the Congress. That's just one of the things they're trying to do. Could you please?
That's what the map does. It draws Casar and Lloyd Doggett into a fight, and maps out something that goes, way down in rural areas and kisses the west of San Antonio, whatever. I mean, for Casar's seat. So yeah, they're trying that, but they're trying 2 seats in Dallas, and they're trying to get rid of Al Green. That's the guy that had a spine and actually stood up during the State of the Union, so to speak. So, they're going after him completely. And they haven't seated anybody in Sylvester Turner's place. They're going after 2 places in the Rio Grande Valley. So, they put their map down. They've drawn a line in the sand. And, the people that can matter to keep them from moving forward on their plan have left the state.
Well, they're trying to get rid of Jasmine Crockett, too, I believe, right?
Well, they haven't targeted. What I heard was, I didn't hear about Jasmine. No, I think Al Green's seat gone to the wind, and that's in Houston. Now, I don't mean to sound like a Texan. Texas is so big.
Well, you are a Texan. That's why we're having you on.
I don't mean that, but Harris County has more people in it than 26 states. So
Right.
when you screw around with the representation of those people, you're really screwing around with democracy.
Absolutely. Well, I live in a county with 11 million people, which is, I think, slightly larger than Harris County, but I know exactly what you're talking about. And, Jasmine Crockett actually spoke out about this already. Anyway, I think she's going to run again with Stephen Colbert. That'll be great. But Alice, we want you to keep coming back, please.
Yes.
We need our main line to Texas. And as you recall, Texas is one of 4 states that used to be a country. There are 4 states in the United States that were once a country.
They didn't teach me this when I was growing up, but the reason Texas was had a war to be independent of Mexico was that Mexico had made slavery illegal.
That's right.
That's kind of stuff you don't hear when you're growing up in Texas schools, but you know, that's what that fight was about.
Well, the Mexicans, when Texas was part of Mexico, the Mexicans invited guys to come down from Tennessee because they wanted more people.
Yeah,
But the guys from Tennessee brought their slaves. And then they wanted independence because they wanted to keep their slaves.
Yep.
So anybody who knows the other three states that were once countries, shout it out. And don't look it up in your phone. Don't cheat. I'll give you the answer.
Okay, we're the biggest one.
Yeah, well, actually, no, you weren't. Believe it or not, you
Alaska?
California. California.
It wasn't its own country. Oh.
The other two, I'll throw it in. Yeah, Vermont was a country, refused to join in the United States for 3 years. It was called the Democratic Republic of Vermont. And the other, of course, was Hawaii, which was a constitutional monarchy, which was not happy about being conquered by the United States. And still isn't, by the way. Okay, Alice, stick with us, please. Nicole Young and anybody else wants to ask about what's going on in Texas. But this is the full report here. They have done it, you know. They're going to try and arrest these guys. I wonder if they're going to send ICE and whatever, because Homeland Security against the Texas guys for being illegal immigrants into Illinois. That would be an interesting angle. I can't unmute you, Nicole. Does anybody else want to speak up before we move ahead? Okay, well, this is all truly amazing. It's really wild stuff. I did promise at the opening hour, and we're going to end in 20 minutes at the top of the hour at 4 o'clock California. I did want to raise very quickly, seems superfluous, and then I do want to get to Epstein, and now that she's in your country there, Ghislaine Maxwell, we do need to talk a bit about developments in that thing. Nicole, we'll call on you as soon as we can get you unmuted. I did want to talk a bit about this Sydney, whatever her last name is, this fashion model who was in a blue jeans ad, and then somebody made a comment that they used the word jeans and jean, and it was somehow racist. I mean, it's ridiculous. I think the advertising company came up with the whole kerfuffle. And you know, Sydney, what's her last name? Mike, what's her last name?
Okay, it's Sydney Sweeney.
Sweeney. There you go.
She's mainly an actress. I guess she's also a model on the side, but she did a great job in a movie about Reality Winner, which was a terrific acting job. And yeah, but lately she's been doing a recast of the infamous Brooke Shields blue jeans ad from God knows how long ago. And, you know, same shot, same pose, same sales pitch, only instead of saying what Brooke Shields said was nothing gets between me and my Jordache.
And what did Sydney Sweeney
my
say?
Calvins.
Oh, yeah,
Sydney
my
Sweeney
Calvin.
said, yeah, my Calvin. Sydney Sweeney said something like, your genes determine everything about you, your hair color, your eye color. And then they pan up to show her face, and she says, my genes are blue. And a lot of people are equating that to eugenics. And, you know, there's the pun of blue genes and genetic genes. And I think you're absolutely right, Sluggo. I think that the company, and it's called American Eagle, and I don't know if that refers to there being an uber patriotic group or right-wing leaning corporation or what, but I know very few lefty corporations that would call themselves American Eagle. Let's just put it that way. So I think that they're leaning into the controversy. They're happy to sell to the Trump cult and piss off people who are liberal or progressives like us. I think that this is turning out to be a big publicity stunt for them. And I don't think that any of this is an accident.
No.
And their decision to hire Sydney Sweeney for this makes sense from their point of view, because she's already been kind of a flashpoint where she's an attractive, talented actress, in my opinion, at least. And she posted something on social media a year or two ago. I think it was her parents' anniversary party, and there were people walking around with red hats, and people thought that they were MAGA hats. They might have been MAGA hats. And you had the usual shock jock types on the right who are always chasing clicks and making money off of fake controversy. And they were claiming that people on the left don't like attractive women. And that sort of thing. So that's what we're looking at here. I think this is a carefully constructed trolling attempt, trying to make money and sell some blue jeans.
Well, first of all, why people would buy blue jeans just because some woman who's nice looking is wearing a pair? I mean, I want to know if they're going to last, and are they going to shrink? Are they going to lose their color? I mean, now the ad doesn't say anything about that. But there's this
Well,
meme.
same here, Sluggo, but I don't think we're their target market.
No, the meme is that the left freaked out because the mention of jeans was going to be, interpreted as racist, and aren't these leftists uptight? I don't think that's a bunch of nonsense, but that's what you hear from these guys. There's this one guy, Greg Gutman, who's really nasty. I mean, what a piece of work he is, and screaming and yelling. So, basically the ad is soft porn. I mean, it's just purely sexual. Has nothing to do with the quality of the blue jeans. And you mentioned, Mike, that she was in a movie and she played Reality Winner. Reality Winner is a great whistleblower. And she really, a tremendous, brave, courageous asset for democracy. And I was glad to hear that Sydney Sweeney, and again, Sydney was my father's name, so it's very, I can't remember the last name, but I'm glad that she played that part, and I hope it sank in. But this is just another, worthless. You have to remember, by the way, I always love this when right wingers get on screaming and yelling about sex, that 11 million people in the United States regularly watch Pornhub. The pornography is the number one attraction on video by far in the United States, and there are three major porn stations apparently, and their audience dwarfs anything else on the internet or on broadcast TV. Every moment of the day that you're hearing Tucker Carlson or Steve Bannon or these other guys ranting and raving, they're like a tiny fraction of who's actually watching Pornhub. So look at this. You look at this ad for Sydney Sweeney. It's soft porn. That's what it is. But who cares? Mike.
Well, Sluggo, there are a few things that underscore exactly what you're saying. One is that VHS machines, the first people to buy those were people who wanted to watch porn. And they sold at a premium and then became a regular consumer item. Another thing is that a lot of hotels make a lot of money on those pay-per-view porn stations. Not that I would know anything about that personally.
If you're not watching porn, you're not an American. Come on.
Well, that's it. Maybe
Sorry,
I'm not. But
don't quote me on that.
Larry David had a really funny show on his Curb Your Enthusiasm where he was out on meeting somebody on some project, and they were comping his hotel, and they weren't going to comp the porn or whatever, and he denied he was watching porn. It was just a whole big thing about that. But apparently the Marriott chain had a big to do about it because they're Latter-day Saints, and they were like, should we allow people to watch porn in our hotels? And the answer was hell yes. That's where we make a lot of our money. So they, you can't get beer at an A&W. You have to get root beer, but you can watch porn in a
Right.
Marriott
Well,
hotel.
for many years, I wrote for Hustler, and Hustler, they were based on their book, and they were going out of business. And the one thing that kept Hustler alive was the revenues from the Hustler station in hotels. So these guys want to scream and yell about Sydney Sweeney's soft porn blue jean ad. Go ahead, but it's completely ridiculous.
Well, another thing is that the prostitutes in areas where the Democrats or the Republicans have conventions
Oh
do
yeah,
very, very, very well. And my
right.
understanding is that the professional women working the Republican convention do exceptionally well.
I think it would be a great exercise. And Dave Saltman, as a journalist, someone should go and do after the upcoming conventions in 28. Somebody should go and interview the hookers at the either convention and then compare what they say about the different parties. That would be really, really interesting. And I don't know if anyone makes predictions here, but Salty, that's something that the networks should really jump at.
If somebody's got to do it, I might as well volunteer for the job.
We'll try and get you funded. But you're not allowed to participate because that would make you unobjective. You'd have bias.
The survey would be tainted, as they say.
Yes, they did. Okay, so much for Sydney Sweeney. We only got 10 minutes left. I want to very quickly move. We mentioned that Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison now in Texas. And I watched, Susan and I watched a couple of nights ago the documentary on her. We had watched the one on Jeffrey Epstein. And I got to say, man, she's a monster. I mean, anybody that's expecting Ghislaine, I guess it's Ghislaine Maxwell, to come forward, the only reason is going to be disappointed. The only reason that people are interested is she going to come forward and say that Donald Trump abused these young women? And, that's the only interest. I mean, she can talk about, Clinton and whoever else, Alan Dershowitz. People care a little bit about Clinton, but the question is, will she indict Trump? And I don't see any indication that she would have any political orientation at all. She has one agenda, which is to get the hell out of there. And she'll say whatever. But I gotta say, until she completely speaks publicly about anything and everything that she knows, they're going to kill her. I mean, she will wind up with the same broken neck that Jeffrey Epstein had. I don't believe for 1 minute.
Sluggo, real quick.
Yeah.
Sluggo, real quick. You said she's in Texas. Are they driving her by any book depositories or anything?
Well, she's in what they call it a club fed, a low security, whatever, completely vulnerable. If she thinks that she's going to hold something over Trump's head and survive, she's delusional. And like I say, I don't think she has any political agenda. She's just going to get out of there. Mila and then Steve.
I recently watched an interview that Ghislaine, I believe that's how it's pronounced, Ghislaine Maxwell did with her brother a couple of years ago, talking about the conditions in the federal prison that she was just moved from. And she at length talked and complained about the quality of the food that she was being served. And she declared, she said that because she's a vegan, that she's supposed to get a certain variety during lunch, but she's typically served tasteless tofu without any seasoning at all. And she was really unhappy about that. So I think that one of the things that may occur in this new facility, this minimum security, some people call it a federal camp, where, there apparently there's a putt-putt golf course and tennis, all kinds of recreational opportunities. There are trees, there's greenery. It's, if you've got to be in prison, it's far more appealing, I suppose. But I think that maybe she will have the opportunity to have her own personal chef come in and provide food more to her liking. And that might have been one of the stipulations that when she met with Todd Blanche, not once, but twice, in order to arrive at this agreement to be transferred, that one of the things that she was requesting was food more to her liking.
Well, once again, and we still have 69 people with us, and we're about to sign off. So if you want to jump in, now's the time. If she's got something on Trump, and that's all anybody cares about at this point. Well, I guess the victims and so a lot of people care very importantly about the punishment she gets, and is it consummate with what she did. But she does not care in any way, shape, or form about the politics of the situation. And the interest now is, will she indict Trump? And if she has material that could indict Trump, I guarantee you she's not going to live. I mean, that's just not going to happen. But that's up to her. We'll see what happens. Steve Caruso?
Yeah, prisoners from El Salvador were talking about what happened in their stay there. They've got deported to Venezuela. And I mean, the amount of torture that they got, and this and that happened, and so forth and so on. Thank God they got out alive. Of course, they're doing much better, in Venezuela. We think that this communist is taking over the country and he's just torturing everybody. No, that's here. That's El Salvador. That's, where the Hatch Act was violated by Trump and Eric Prince and Peter Thiel and the Logan Act and all that stuff. So how can we distinguish between a presidential act versus self-preservation in Trump's prosecution of Ghislaine, or the dismissal of prosecution of Ghislaine? This isn't a presidential act. This is self-preservation on Trump's part. And there's just no denying it.
You got it. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you, Steve, for engineering. It's 3:56 California time. Still have 67 people. You guys have such a great attention span. Mike, thanks for bringing Kai on. And Alice, thanks for the report from Texas. Be careful down there, for God's sakes. And if they do arrest you, I think you need to request going to where, tell them you're a lifelong friend of Ghislaine, and you want to season her tofu for her. But we'll have you back next week. This is an amazing day. You have to put this in perspective. The governor of California has issued arrest warrants against 50 plus
Texas.
I'm sorry, Governor of Texas has issued arrest warrants for 50 members, elected members of the Texas legislature, because they refused to vote in favor of gerrymandering the state. I mean, what kind of drug are we on as a culture? It's astounding. Anyway, that's what I get for eating while we're talking. This has been an amazing session. Thank you, everybody.
So I go real quick. I wanted to give out an invitation to Sydney Sweeney if she wants to drop by and give her take on the TV commercial, or even more on her role as reality winner.
Well, it's astounding, and I've never seen that in anything written about her, that she had that role. They all telling us that she's a Republican. Trump endorsed her because she's a Republican, and the company's stock went up 20%. I'm sure whoever it was at the company that put out the ad is going to get a huge bonus for coming up with this ridiculous controversy about how people on the left were, concerned about racism and blah, blah. It's a complete, absolute piece of nonsense. Anyway, we do wish Ghislaine Maxwell a long life. Again, if you know anything about Donald Trump, you better spill it now. Everybody, thank you. An amazing 2 hours again. Thank you, Steve, for engineering, Mike, and we will be back. in a week, and we'll see. We'll try and have all 50 of the legislators from Texas on. So, Alice, if you can help us with that, that would be great. No nukes, everybody. We will see you in Solartopia.